Hello. I'm HoJo.
And I'm Hunnsy.
And welcome to this, the groundbreaking 11th episode of HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, the safe space for old rock gumbies just like us, where we know we're doing something right because our kids are always telling us to turn that shit off. Isn't that right, Hunnsy?
They are the words that I hear constantly from my daughter. What is this racket?
It's a disgrace, isn't it? We've brought them up badly.
Well, we've tried. I still believe I can turn her.
What is your strategy for turning your daughter into a heavy metal gumby just like you?
I'm coming from a difficult starting place because she likes grime music.
Yeah,
right?
that's a tough ask, isn't it?
I've got to sort of build it up slowly by introducing her maybe like sort of gently into it. Maybe I'll start her off on some Slayer.
Good, yeah.
I always say to her, the stuff she listens to would not exist if it wasn't for Faith No More.
Is there any logic to this theory?
No, none whatsoever.
None at all. You're blinding her with science, aren't you?
I'm just basically blagging my way. I'm trying to find a route in. I just can't.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. I'm rooting for you, mate. I'm rooting for you.
Okay, thank you. She saw a photograph of Nuno Bettencourt.
Yeah, here we go.
From when he was obviously in his pomp. And she thought he was quite Leng, which I believe means quite good looking, I guess.
Leng. How's that spelled? L-E-N-G?
Yeah, it's a word that they use these days to describe people who are good looking. Leng.
Never heard that before. We're on to the 11th episode of HoJo and Hunnssy's Hard Rock House. I've run out of digits to count. I can't count on my fingers anymore.
I didn't think we'd get to 3.
So what do you think has been the secret of our, and I'm making that inverted comma sign in the air here, success?
What's the secret of our success? I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, I don't care if nobody's listening to it. I just like chatting to you about silly heavy metal music, so I don't give a shit.
Metal's the best, fuck the rest. Is that what you're saying?
That's a good T-shirt. Right, should we crack on? Because
so come on, we're going to run out of time.
This week, I've been listening to the debut album by Night Ranger, which is called Dawn Patrol.
Are you sure we haven't talked about this before?
What, Dawn Patrol?
Yeah, maybe I'm getting that wrong.
No.
Never said, this week I've been listening to Dawn Patrol. Because how embarrassing would that be if we went back and went, episode 7, Hunnsy's going, this week I've been listening to Dawn Patrol. I know.
Well, I've talked to you about Dawn Patrol before, like many times, but not on the pod.
Okay, well, that's good. I believe you. You're worried now, aren't you? You're worried. Never mind. You know what the strategy is when you're worried like that? Press on.
Ah, yes, undeterred.
Tell me, you've been listening to Dawn Patrol by Night Ranger.
Well, I listen to that album a lot because for me, and I think this is the first time we're going to dip our toes into the AOR genre.
Ooh.
Are we all right with that? Yeah, okay. We have referenced Journey, you wearing a Journey T-shirt when you were attacked by Ratchet.
Yeah, I started off when I was getting into heavy rock by not listening to what you call heavy rock, but listening to AOR. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What do we say, Hunnsy? We love heavy metal from the days when it was neither
heavy nor metal.
Nor metal.
Exactly. Yeah, Night Ranger, Dawn Patrol, for me, one of the greatest AOR albums ever. It was still heavy. If you had any kind of worries about AOR and too many keyboards and all that sort of stuff, I think Dawn Patrol alleviated those worries because it was still a twin guitar attack. Copyright, yeah. You must know that album. You must love that album.
I do know that album. I remember when it came out, actually, which was 80... What year was it? Have you done your research?
It came out... It came out in 1982.
Frantically scrambles for Wikipedia.
It came out in 1982. Did you know that Night Ranger weren't originally called Night Ranger? They were called Ranger, but they had to change their name. It's very Spinal Tap, this. They had to change their name to Night Ranger because there was already a band called Ranger.
That's right. If you want to get into some boring talk about Night Ranger history, they started out as a funk band. Did you know that?
Yeah, weren't they called Stereo?
I think they might have been, yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember that they started out in the Bay Area as a funk band. They must have been very, very young when they were doing that, though. Yeah,
definitely. But this debut album, 1982, Dawn Patrol, full of absolute bangers from an AOR heavy rock perspective.
What's it open with? Don't Tell Me You Love Me?
Yes. I mean, come on. Opening tracks on debut albums. I think Don't Tell Me You Love Me is right up there with...
With what?
Other great ones. No, but... I've always said... Boston's More Than a Feeling is the greatest opening track on a debut album, yeah?
What about Loving You Sunday Morning by the Scorpions from the Love Drive album?
That's not a debut album.
Oh, of course you know. What am I talking about, you fool and communist?
What was the opening track on the Scorpions' debut album?
Oh, blimey, that was Lonesome Crow, and nobody's ever listened to that. So nobody out there will ever be able to tell us what the opening track on Lonesome Crow is.
But everybody goes on about, Black Sabbath on Black Sabbath and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Justified to be considered. I think More Than a Feeling by Boston is the greatest.
It's a hard one to beat, isn't it?
It is a hard one. Don't Tell Me You Love Me, though, comes in pretty close. And then straight into Sing Me Away, which is another brilliant AOR track. But the album is magnificent. There are a couple of fillers that you kind of go, oh, should that have been included possibly? But At Night She Sleeps, absolute banger. Eddie's Coming Out Tonight. Can't Find Me a Thrill, opening track on side 2. What a track. If someone had sat in the studio and gone, right, let's put the track listing together. You know how we talked about, I think it was your Foghat Night Shift where you went first 3 tracks on Foghat's Night Shift as a kind of crash bang wallop. Bit of a Raven reference there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good. Opening 3 tracks. If Night Ranger on Dawn Patrol had gone, Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Sing Me Away, Can't Find Me a Thrill, I'd be arguing with you now, saying that I disagree with your Foghat triple whammy assessment. But unfortunately, they put Can't Find Me a Thrill to the opening track on side 2. And then obviously the closing track, which was Night Ranger. Night Ranger by Night Ranger is also a brilliant song. So yeah,
Sing Me Away seems to be a very soft song for a metal man like you.
I just love it.
Do you?
Yeah, I love it. You got to remember, you touched on it before. I think you can listen to your thrash, you can listen to your heavy stuff. You can love a specific genre of this music. You can love the more extreme side of it, or you can love the more bluesy 70s. But I think if you actually sat people down, they'd all have a favourite AOR band or songs. They'd all love that. We've all dipped our toes in keyboard, melodic AOR rock, and we've loved it.
Did you think that the reason you liked Sing Me Away was because when you got a girl in your younger days in Newcastle, they go, oh, Hunsy's so sensitive. He's so sensitive. He likes Sing Me Away by Night Ranger. Oh, he's so sensitive.
No, I don't think I was ever sensitive.
God forbid.
I don't think I've ever been sensitive, to be honest with you. I've got a love of many AOR albums. We got a request from somebody, our Facebook page, which is HoJo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, the imaginatively titled.
Where did you come up with that?
I don't know. If you ever want to find us on Facebook. And I asked people, what do you want us to talk about? And there was a lot of requests for Diving for Pearls.
Oh, really? Diving for Pearls? Not a band I know a lot about. I better go and do some Hunzy-approved research.
Yeah, and that first record is an absolute AOR classic. I might be giving away what I might be listening to on next week's episode, but I'm not going to go 2 AOR albums in 2 weeks.
I reckon what you're going to do is come back next week and go, HoJo, this week I've been listening to Dawn Patrol by Night Ranger. You did that last week, mate.
For the 3rd pod.
In a row.
You've really got me worried that I did talk about it.
Yeah, I know, but we're not going to go back and look. Never apologise, never explain.
Anyway, it's a brilliant album.
Before we move off Night Ranger, I know that we need to talk about what I've been listening to, but we must quickly discuss Sister Christian, which I know isn't on the first album, but
it's not.
Is the soundtrack to one of the greatest movie moments of all time.
It is, I believe it was in Boogie Nights, wasn't it?
Oh, do you remember? It's when they're going to do a drug deal. And Alfred Molina is playing the seriously strung out, seriously weird drug dealer bloke. Yeah. Who's got his little chickadee in the house with him. He's letting off firecrackers every 5 seconds. And everybody's wired because they're all out in their minds on cocaine.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
It's just so tense, isn't it?
It's just incredible. And the whole slow-mo of it, of guns going off and the feathers coming out the pillows. And
Sister Christian starts off really slow and nice.
Yeah.
And then, do you remember? And they're getting more and more tense and the sweat's running down their face. And then he's talking about the deal and are they going to do it? And then when it gets to the bit where it starts building up with the drum, you're motoring. Do you remember? And he makes them stop while he listens to it. Oh, this is my favourite bit. We're motoring. It's so brilliant. If anybody hasn't seen that scene in Boogie Nights, go and see it immediately. It's an absolute classic.
Did you ever interview them?
Night Ranger, funnily enough, I did. And in another of my guises as a freelance writer for top Japanese rock magazine, Burn, I was just doing a piece about my interviews with Night Ranger. I did 2 interviews with Night Ranger. One of them from about 85 with Kelly Keagy. Brilliant name. Not Kevin Keegan, Kelly Keagy.
That was like round about the time of that 7 Wishes album.
That's right. I think it was Seven Wishes. And then 2 years later, I interviewed Jeff Watson and Jack Blades. But all by phone, though, so didn't really know them as people.
I saw Brad Gillis playing
with Ozzy?
Playing guitar with Ozzy.
Very short stint, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was when Ozzy had shaved his head. I remember seeing him at Newcastle.
Yes.
I saw him at Newcastle City Hall, and I think Pete Way was on bass.
I think you're right. Pete Way was there for 5 minutes flat, but he did do something around that time, so you're probably right, yeah. I'm
pretty sure. I remember seeing Brad Gillis, and he was amazing.
We're massively digressing here, but that's what this podcast is all about. Around that time, do you remember he was hanging the Dwarf, wasn't he? Ozzy?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he did that album.
Whatever it was.
I think it was Speak of the Devil, where he did
that. Oh, yeah.
And it was a live album of just all Sabbath, remember?
That was it, yeah. Contractual obligation, really.
Yeah. Do you think?
Oh, without a doubt. He was hanging the Dwarf, and I went to a signing, an in-store at the HMV in Birmingham, where I was living at the time, and the Dwarf was with him in the full get-up, makeup and the cowl and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And do you remember, it caused a bit of an outcry, hadn't it? Because people had said, it's terrible, it's mistreating dwarves and all that. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I remember
and
it, yeah.
He was there, and somebody who was queuing up to get an autograph had asked him about that, and he said, well, how else is he going to earn a fucking living, right? And he says, and anyway, he's my fucking dwarf. And I remember, I'll never forget, the fella who was the dwarf, whoever it was, turned around and he went, yeah, I'm his fucking dwarf.
Brilliant. Can we get the dwarf on? Do you think
if only we could find out who he was.
Well, that's your challenge.
Okay, that's a big challenge.
That is a big challenge. I am challenging you to find Ozzy Osbourne's dwarf from, I think it was probably around about 1983.
I reckon that's a challenge we should pass on to the single-digit listeners.
Yeah. Who was it?
Who was it? Is he still alive? We hope he's still alive.
And where are they now?
And where is he now?
And can we get him on?
I love the fact you always want the most ridiculous people to be interviewed. That's good.
They're more interesting than normal people.
They are more. They're more interesting than rock stars, aren't they?
Too bloody right. Yeah.
Yeah. Ask me who I've been listening to.
Oh, yeah, that bit, yeah. What have you been listening to, HoJo? Please tell me it's Lords of the New Church.
I've been listening to a band called Wild Horses.
Oh!
Now that's got your interest, hasn't it?
Brian Robertson, Jimmy Bain.
Here's a good question for you to see what your knowledge of Wild Horses is. Who were the original players besides Bain and Robertson? Bain played bass, Robertson obviously lead guitar. Bain was singing. Do you know who the two original members that made up the group were? So, guitar player and drummer. Really interesting, this.
Is this the original lineup?
Before they got a record deal, they never recorded anything. This is, well, obviously, Jimmy Bain was known as one of London's greatest rock liggers. So he knew everybody, didn't he? Oh, he was. He was always in the pub with everybody. God bless his soul. He's gone now, of course. But he was absolute top level ligger. He knew everybody. So the two people who were originally in Wild Horses, probably never guessed, but incredible.
If I recall, I think Kenny Jones, who obviously went on to play with
well done.
I think Kenny Jones was in them.
Incredible metal knowledge. Well done.
I vaguely remember that.
Oh, brilliant. Well done. Guitar player?
No. I do know that in a later lineup, Reuben Archer was in them for a brief.
Yeah, that's not interesting, is it? It's the first two albums.
And Frank Noon was in them as well.
Yeah, ex-Def Leppard drummer Frank Noon. Yeah. No, the original guitar player that they had before Neil Carter came on board was Jimmy McCulloch, who'd been in Wings.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
That was kind of like a prototype supergroup, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wow.
Don't know what happened to the two of them, why they didn't work out, because obviously it ended up being Neil Carter and Clive Edwards. Here's another good bit of rock and roll trivia. Do you know who Neil Carter had played with before Wild Horses?
Oh my God, you're going back now.
Oh man, this is great now.
Neil Carter, obviously I know him from his UFO days.
Yeah.
And his Gary Moore days, obviously.
Yeah, but this is all post-Wild Horses, but pre-Wild Horses. Shall I sing you a song from the person he played with?
Please do.
Claire, the moment I met you, I swear.
Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Wow.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Neil Carter played with Gilbert O'Sullivan before joining Wild Horses.
Anyway. Is he still around, Neil Carter?
Neil Carter, he's playing with Phil Mogg again. In Mogg's Motel.
Wow.
Yeah. He took years and years out, Neil. He's an absolutely lovely man, Neil Carter. Took years and years out of the music business and taught music in a private school in Brighton for years.
Oh, wow.
And then when poor old Paul Raymond croaked, Moggy called him up. He'd retired then from his work in the school. He dusted off the Les Paul and off he went.
Wow. That's brilliant. So you've been listening to the first album by Wild Horses?
Yeah, debut album by Wild Horses. Really interesting band. Do you remember this record?
I do. I think I've got it. In fact, no, I have got it on vinyl.
Really interesting record. Kind of sort of a post-Lizzie-ish vibe at times. The song Dealer, that says a lot about why that band didn't make it, doesn't it? Dealer, written by Jimmy Bain, Brown Robertson and Scott Gorham.
Wow.
Fly Away, written by Jimmy Bain and Phil Lynott.
Ah.
Yeah, lots of connections with the world of Lizzie, and as we know, the world of Lizzie was perhaps infused with a few drugs.
I've got a single by the Wild Horses. Yeah.
What is it, Reservation?
No. Okay, so there's a couple of stories about singles here. There's one when I bought the 7-inch single by the Sex Pistols, and I think it was either Silly Thing or Come On Everybody. So there was outrage in the Huns house at the lyrical content and the context of the Sex Pistols B-side, Friggin' in the Riggin', but not as much outrage as there was to the B-side, to a Wild Horses single, which was called Criminal Tendencies. Do you know what the B-side to that single was called?
The Rapist, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, I really can't.
No. I mean, it's...
I don't know what the lyrics are. I've never looked. I just saw something when I was doing my Wikipedia research.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, The Rapist, B-side of Criminal Tendencies. I'm not sure about that.
Anyway, they only made 2 albums, didn't they?
They only made 2 albums, and Neil Carter only made 1 album with them because he buggered off to join UFO. I was listening to the first studio album, and it's produced by Trevor Rabin. Did you know that?
No, I never knew that.
Of Yes fame. This was 3 years before the 90125 album, which was obviously a huge hit and also had massive production values, which is weird because this album, to be honest, hasn't been very well produced.
No,
so I don't know if they were working on the tiniest of budgets or Jimmy Bain decided to spend it all on booze. No idea. But there's some really good songs there. It's very song oriented. And actually some of the lyrics are quite good, a bit more thinking man's metal. Reservation is about the mistreatment of Native Americans.
Yeah.
Dealer is about dealing. So that's
Is it about a car dealer?
No, it's about a drug dealer.
Okay. Okay.
And Criminal Tendencies is about people whose tendencies are criminal.
Nights on the Town? What's that about?
Oh, no, we're not going to get into that. No. I think we could run through all of them. Anyway, we've just taken the piss out of all their lyric writing, but actually a really interesting album, not the best produced record in the world, but a good snapshot of where those guys were. Robertson had such incredible success with Lizzie, then went to Wild Horses. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a really big band. And it just didn't really happen for him. It faded out, really.
Robertson went on to Motorhead after that, didn't he?
Straight after that, he was in Motorhead. Yeah. He had a haircut, put on some leg warmers. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Didn't he put eyeliner on?
Oh, quite possibly.
Yeah, and a headband.
And went to Motorhead, and it all just went terribly wrong, didn't it?
But I actually like that Motorhead album. You know, The Perfect Day?
Right, yeah.
Anyway, but that's not the Wild Horses, it's Motorhead.
It's not the Wild Horses. So anyway, Wild Horses is the record I've been listening to. A very interesting record and worth a listen. Some good songs on there. It'd be amazing if somebody were to take this and do some kind of Wonders of Remixing thing.
Well, wasn't it reissued on Rock Candy Records?
It was. So Wild Horses' first album, well worth a listen to. A real obscurity, but some real good songs. Reservation's great. Face Down is great. Criminal Tendencies and No Strings Attached. Those are probably the 4 best songs on the album.
I always liked the sleeve, the cover. It broke the mould of hard rock, heavy rock album covers. Sort of duotone, black and white photograph with a red tint over it. I'd never seen anything like that before. And it stood out. If you want stand out of your album cover, that's the way to do it. Keep it simple. When everybody else is putting dragons and castles and demons and things like that on the front cover, just put the band in, black and white photograph, put a red tint over it, bang crash wall up, there you go. That's going to stand out.
Takes about 5 minutes, invoice for £1,000. Thank you very much.
£1,000.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was the good old days, wasn't it? When the record, you could rip people off in the record industry that way. Nowadays, you have people calling you up, no names mentioned, going, could you just do me this favour? Could you just do me this favour? Because there's no budget. There's no budget anymore.
No names mentioned.
There's no budget.
Oh, I think we know who they are. I've worked with him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Everybody phones you now and goes, oh, there's no budget.
There's no budget. I hear the words, can you just?
Yeah, can you just? And of course, because you're a lovely man, you have just.
I have, yes.
Yeah, many times.
Exactly. Anyway, Wild Horses, Night Ranger, go and listen to them.
Yeah, there you go. So we've done our usual. We've talked and talked and talked, and we've almost run out of time. But when we were talking about appalling lyrics from The Rapist, I feel quite dirty saying that.
I can't actually go and look and find out what the lyrics were to that.
No, I'm not going to do it either because it's going to be awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it did make me think when we talked about the appalling lyrics. Appalling lyrics is going to be a great thing we can talk about in more detail, isn't it?
There are so many.
I'm going to note that down. But I was reading something the other day, and it was our dear friend Lips from Anvil.
Oh.
And it was a quote right from the start, because do you remember? They were sex people, weren't they, Anvil?
They were, yes.
Well, they talked about sex a lot. He gave this quote, and it would have been in 82 or 83.
He's a good mate of yours, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a good mate. I don't always agree with his approach to sexual lyrics, but he is still a good mate. But this one was funny, because he gave a quote. And it said, I've been on the road long enough now, and I go out and I've seen the behaviour of some of the women who come to our shows, and their behaviour is appalling. So it's entirely understandable that my lyrics are appalling too.
I'm just amazed that he says that women go to Anvil shows.
Yeah. Not in Newcastle, they didn't.
I saw Anvil supporting somebody at Newcastle City Hall. I can't remember what it was.
Have you seen, incidentally, they are on the road
again
this year. They've been on the road, and they must have played 150 shows, something mad like that.
Insane. You had a friendship with Lips way beyond our friendship, going back to...
Way beyond the depth of our friendship, but way beyond our friendship in terms of time.
Yeah.
I love you more than I love Lips.
Well, tell him that when we get him on the show.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. We have to talk about that, though, because you've got a million stories about Anvil, haven't you?
I got pulled up by the cops outside his apartment in Toronto one time for drinking on the street, which, frankly, was just something I didn't know about. I didn't know you couldn't drink in the street. I'm from England, man. You drink everywhere. I don't know if you still aren't. I imagine you're not. But at the time, 1983... you weren't allowed to drink on the streets in Toronto. No. And I was merrily chugging on some bottle of beer or something.
Yeah.
And the cops came up with the blues and twos, all guns blazing, into the courtyard of the flat where Lips was living at the time and had me up against a wall.
Bloody hell.
The misunderstanding was soon cleared up and I was allowed to go on my way. But I don't know if Lips was very happy about having the cops near to his house, because I suspect there might have been all sorts of things that he wouldn't have wanted them to see there.
Right, are we going to crack on? Because...
Well, I don't know that we are going to crack on. I think we're just going to go, that's enough. We've given about 25 different stories. We've given our whole repertoire away in one episode. And talking about what albums we've been listening to was just a precursor to lots of stories about Ozzy, about Lips, about getting arrested, about appalling lyrics, all sorts. Don't you reckon? I reckon the idea that you and I discussed very briefly beforehand just rolls over. It's a rollover week. It's like the lottery. And that's going to give everybody the incentive to come back and listen to HoJo and Hunnsy Hard Rock House episode 12, which will be coming to you in about a week's... Well, not in about a week's time, in exactly a week's time.
Which we promise will be slightly more structured.
I don't know that we can promise that. Can we really promise that?
We can't promise anything, HoJo. We can promise, though, that Judas Priest will always be heavy metal.
And that you and I will be discussing hard rock and heavy metal for as long as we can draw breath.
Exactly. HoJo, hang on. Just before everybody goes, can I remind people that you can contact us and you can give us words of wisdom, bits of advice, things you'd want us to talk about on usual social channels. So you can get hold of us on Twitter or X. I prefer Twitter at HoJo and Hunnsy. Instagram is HoJo_and_Hunnsy. Yeah, I know, rubbish. But if you want to be old school, just contact us on email, which is HoJoandHunnsy@gmail.com. Or you can contact us on Facebook direct. Just find our Facebook page, send us a message, comment on the stuff that we post about, and that would be brilliant.
One other point. If you could give one person the prime info that HoJo and Hunssy's Hard Rock House is your podcast of choice, just one person, that helps us spread the word, and this time next year we'll be millionaires, Hunnsy.
Or we'll still be talking about a load of shite.
For no money. Mate, as usual, lots of fun. Always good. Thanks for pitching in. Go away and listen to some Night Ranger. Don't listen to that B-side of Criminal Tendencies anymore because it's all wrong. We know that. And I'm going to catch up with you this time next week.
Brilliant, mate. Look forward to it. Have a good week. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.